Sorry about that. Wanted to hit recording. The moderator this evening will be Walter Olson. As this is a working meeting for the commission, no questions will be taken during this session. If you do have questions, please email them to redistricting.commission@maryland.gov. The chat feature is also disabled for that reason. Closed captioning is offered tonight. Please make sure that in your control bar, if you're not seeing the closed captioning, that you make sure that you don't have hide subtitles on in the section that says CC live transcript. This meeting will be recorded and is being recorded now. Thank you very much. Walter?
Thank you, Kristen. As we did last week, I'd like to begin by having the members of the commission introduce themselves, starting with the co-chairs. And I'm Walter Olson. I'm from Frederick County. I'm one of the 3 co-chairs, and we will be rotating. Last week, Judge Alex Williams chaired, and next week, Dr. Kate Hetherington will chair. Would you like to introduce yourselves any more? Kate?
All right, thank you, Walter, and good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you again. My name is Kate Hetherington. I'm president of Howard Community College. I'm a resident of Howard County, and I live in Columbia, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Right. Good evening. I'm Alex Williams. I'm a retired judge, and I'm a resident of Prince George's County, Maryland. Thank you and good evening.
As we introduce ourselves, the other 6 commissioners, I'd like to start with the 2 that we weren't able to hear from because of audio problems last week. And please do take a little extra time to introduce yourselves, starting with Cheryl Brooks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cheryl Brooke. I'm a resident of Baltimore County in the Essex area. I'm from Dundalk and Turner Station. Very proud to be a Baltimore County resident. I'm also a proud principal of Berkshire Elementary School in the Dundalk area of Baltimore County. So I'm honored to be here today, and I hope you enjoy the meeting.
And Mary Clawson.
Good evening, I'm Mary Clawson. I'm retired from the federal government. I spent my entire career working with maps and how people use maps for safety of navigation, as well as for the important roles of making decisions. So I'm really delighted to have the opportunity to work with the commission. I live in Severna Park, and I've been living in Anne Arundel County since 1969. Thank you.
Jay Amin.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jay Amin. I'm a resident of Anne Arundel County. I'm also a project manager and development director for a boutique land brokerage and development services firm in Ellicott City. Thank you.
In general, the closed captioning is very good, but I noticed that Anne Arundel County gives it a lot of trouble. It came out as urban rural county and suburban park instead of Severna Park. And then I think Animal County when Jay was talking. So I'm going to train it is Anne Arundel County. Anyway, on to Kim Cummings.
Hi, I'm Kim Cummings, resident of Dorchester County, longtime resident on the Eastern Shore. I am a court supervisor at the Dorchester County Circuit Court, specializing in land records and licensing.
And Jonathan Fusfield.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Fusfield. I'm a communications manager for a research firm that has a lot of government contracts. I live in Montgomery County.
Tipper Thomas.
Good evening, everyone. William Tipper Thomas. I am a systems engineer for the Department of Defense. I also am the program director for a grassroots nonprofit organization.
Thank you all and welcome again. Our first order of business is going to be approval of minutes from last week's meeting, and I'll talk a little about how there won't be minutes after this one time, but because of the technical glitches last time, we weren't able to capture a video record of last week's meeting. So instead, there are detailed minutes. You should all have gotten those minutes in email. Is there any commissioner who did not get a chance to look at the minutes? Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes that anyone would like to offer? Seeing none, do we approve the minutes?
Yeah, I'd make a motion, Walter, I'd make a motion, Alex Williams, to approve the minutes that were previously circulated.
Okay, any second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved. Now, this makes a good chance to talk about how we have switched platforms to one which, as you can see through live transcript, is going to produce its own transcript, which means that we will not have to go through the minutes process in future meetings. The Zoom is not to say bad things about the other platform that we used last week, but there were a lot of problems with it, and Zoom is one that nearly everyone is familiar with. Maryland, I believe, only just got permission very, very recently to begin using Zoom instead of the other platforms. And one question in particular that came up from Jonathan was the facility for deaf and hard of hearing members of the public or others that might want to be part of our meetings. And the planning department was in touch with the State Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing in order to check out what are best practices for state meetings. And they advised that the front line for accessibility in this way is the captioning. However, there is also a available second line, which is one nice thing about this technology is that it's going to be easier to do this in Zoom than in the physical in-person hearings. But in Zoom, it's possible to retain an ASL signer, American Sign Language signer, at fairly short notice and get them into a box as one of the participants. And that way, someone who needs to testify in ASL will have someone who can do that simultaneous translation to us and all of the other listeners. So that should cover it, I hope, pretty well, but I would love to hear from the deaf and hard of hearing community if they have ideas for ways that we can improve it further. That brings us to section 2, which is getting into a little more deeply to some of the subject matter and some of the personalities that will be getting to know in the course of the work. I send out to all of the commissioners a few links, and I'm not sure whether we can do this as a share screen for members of the public who may not have seen it, but just to briefly describe, it's pretty easy to find the Commission's own website. Just type in Maryland Citizens Redistricting Commission, and it will probably be the first hit on Google. This is a starting point, but it's also only a beginning, because this is going to be the portal through which we interact with the public, through which a lot of people learn about us and our work, and through which a lot of people are able to share their views of what we should be doing. So it is very much a work in progress, and I would like, good. There is the, and you can see the URL up at the upper left. I think if you just type in redistricting.maryland.gov, you will get it without the rest. I just want to plant that seed. We should all be looking at it, thinking of ways in which it could be made better. And I'd also like to invite the public out there, if you see ways that we should be improving the website, don't hesitate to use email to let us know about that. This is going to be front and center. The better features we can build in, the more effective the work of our commission will be. So that was the first link that I sent out. The second one, I think a lot fewer of you will probably have seen, but the Maryland Department of Planning, which gives us our staff support, has its own website on redistricting. And I can tell you it is really something of a treasure of information. It has a frequently asked questions, for example, which I found very well worth reading. We'll probably want to develop an FAQ for the Commission's own site, but in the meantime, it's a very good introduction to redistricting. And of course, the Planning Department has been working on redistricting all along for every 10 years when it comes up, and not only for the various actors in state government. Here we are. Not only for the different actors in state government, but also for many others, such as county governments and municipalities that need redistricting information for their own council districts and many other reasons. So check out one of my favorite on the left bar and menu bar is historical districts. I can say that once we get to regional hearings, you're going to have a lot of people talking about in the old days when the Eastern Shore connected with Southern Maryland, with Calvert and St. Mary's County, as it did in an older map, or the days when Western Maryland, Frederick and Washington and Allegheny and Garrett connected with Northern Harford County, which you wouldn't think it could do, but sure enough, go back, browse through those historical maps because the public has a great memory of them. And sometimes the proposals that we will hear is, why can't you put us back to blankety blank as far as counties that used to be connected. Here we have, you can drill down to individual maps of both congressional and legislative districts. So again, lots and lots to explore. I'll stop there in singing its praises, but it's very, very good introduction to many things that we'll get to know over the course of the year. The third one that I recommended, or the third and fourth ones, were the reports of the governor's two earlier commissions. This is the 2015 report of the Maryland Redistricting Reform Commission. We mentioned last week that Judge Williams and I were involved, as well as leaders of various civic groups like the League of Women Voters. And the significance here is that it laid out some ideals and objectives for what citizen-powered redistricting should look like. It is very largely the model that Governor Hogan used in writing the executive order. So the explanations of why it went in one direction rather than another are useful background for why our commission, for example, is set up in a way unlike some other state commissions, why we blind ourselves to political data, for example, or why we have a particular philosophy on single member districting. You'll see discussions of all of those issues. And then going on to the fourth and last link that I sent out, which is the report of the Emergency Commission on 6th Congressional District Gerrymandering. Again, many of you know the basic story here, which is that a court struck down the 6th district, and it was necessary to come up with a proposed alternative that the judge might find fair and suitable. I won't go into detail except to say that in some ways it was a trial run or a pilot project, in that it was the first time that a commission had ever been pulled together of citizen volunteers in Maryland to do that work of having public hearings, taking information from the public and proposing what seemed to be the best map before us. Again, this is very much the plan for the much larger task before us, which is much more complicated and involves much more mapping. But the idea was tried out in this commission. So you might want to take a look at its report too. So these and much, much more will go into virtual binder, which will grow as the year goes on and probably have different divisions. Again, there will be no test. You don't have to catch up on any particular parts of it, but it will. One of the things that I encourage you to do is to send in links that you would like to see there that are interesting articles or resources. I have some more that I will be proposing myself, but keep in mind that this is a resource that you can add to. Just get in touch with one of us, one of the co-chairs. And around now, I probably should turn over the microphone to Secretary Rob Mccord, who is going to go in a little bit deeper into some of the things that the planning department is going to be able to do for us. So Secretary Mccord, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much, Walter.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Walter, yeah,
I'm
the
sorry.
Secretary, just before
Okay.
we proceed, I just want to note a typo on the agenda. It looks like we have two sections. It should be, we're really in the section 3 right now, but you can see
Yes.
the, looks like it's a typo. So just want to let you know it's
Oh,
actually 5
right,
sections.
yeah, it should be section 3, Commission Planning Matters Discussion. So just
Yeah.
step to the next
We're-
Roman
Okay.
numeral 1 there. Okay, so
Okay.
Secretary.
Yeah.
All right, very well. Thank you very much. I'm just going to give you kind of an overview of, you'll hear the word Maptitude all the time. Maptitude is a product of the Caliper Corporation. It is the software that the department has used for many iterations of redistricting. It is also the software used by the majority of legislatures in the country. So we will be, I'm going to give you just a little bit of an overview of kind of what it can do by giving you an example. So if you can follow my example, I've got a couple pages of notes here. I'm just going to give you the example kind of in midair so that you can understand what's happening. If you can just imagine the map of Maryland, and then imagine that we're over on Commissioner Cummings' side at the Eastern Shore, okay? So if we're going to make a district based on a congressional district, that would be, we start with apportionment data. Apportionment data are the data that was already released in April 30th, which is that 6,185,278 people in Maryland, okay? And then that includes the federal government military contractors assigned and those families that are living overseas. That number will be larger than the actual number of the population of Maryland, but for apportionment purposes, that's what's required. So that 6,185,000 is the number we start with for that. We simply divide that by 8. That comes to 773,159.75. So let's say 773,160. Now, with Maptitude, you could start the district over there at Ocean City, over in Worcester County, and start coming across the Eastern Shore. Let's imagine you went up the Eastern Shore. You took the lower Eastern Shore, Worcester, Wycomico, Somerset, Dorchester, and then you went to Talbot, Queen Anne's, Caroline, and Kent, and Cecil. In the lower Eastern Shore, you have only 214,000 people estimated to be there, and you have 244,000 people in the upper Eastern Shore. So that's only 459,000 people, and we need 773,160 in this district. So we would have to keep going in the direction of the Eastern Shore. If that was your pleasure, keep going in the direction of Eastern Shore. So at that point, after we have Cecil in, we've got to make the decision once we cross the Susquehanna into Harford County and we pull Harford County in. Harford County has 251,000 people. So now we have 717,070 people. So we are still short 56,000 people to make the district the size it needs to be. All those congressional districts need to be the same number of people in each district. So we then have to make you would have to make a decision on which way to go into what piece of Baltimore County would be appropriate to add to that in order to get the 56,000 people. So at this point, you would use the software to zoom in. The software, we've been talking about county after county after county for totals, which is how you will probably start the process with the congressional districts. And I'm just taking the Eastern Shore and Western Maryland. They're the two easiest examples. So I just took the shore and said, now we still have to find 56,000 people to add to this district. Do we go to the lower part of Baltimore County or the northern part of Baltimore County? Then you typically would zoom into the tract or the block group or even the census block level. So there are basically, in a census tract, there's between 1,200 to 8,000 people. Optimally, the census tries to keep it around 4,000 people. And state and county boundaries are always census tract boundaries. So the census tracts will always follow, they'll never violate those boundaries. And then you have block groups. They're divisions of census tracts between 600 and 3,000 people, and they're clusters of blocks all in the same census tract. And they are usually contiguous, and they don't generally cross state, county, or tract boundaries. So they may cross municipal boundaries here and there, but they won't cross the state or county boundaries, or the boundaries that have been established for a census tract. And then the smallest unit would be a census block. That's the smallest area. They nest within other areas, and they're the basis basically for tabulating everything, all the census blocks, and then block groups, and then census tracts. So blocks, block groups, census tracts, that's how it goes. And they generally can follow visible features like streams or railroad tracks or major roadways, and also non-visible features that you couldn't really see from the map, some property lines, municipal boundaries, city and town limits, and they can really have any population or sometimes no population. There are actually little census blocks with no population in them, but they're used for the tabulation purpose to understand there's nobody that lives here. So that's not going to add to your voting total. But as you see the population being spread out, the geographic area that covers this census block maybe gets bigger, but the population is much smaller. So then Maptitude is going to let you start checking and adding these blocks to your building of a district. So you will be able to add these blocks until you get to the magic number. Every time you add a block, the percentage differential will keep going down, and it'll display that in the software for you. And I will have that available to you as soon as I can for a demonstration, and I'll point you to some resources so you can see how that actually works. But you have to take into account what you've heard Commissioner Olson say about at one point in time, Western Maryland was hooked to Northern Harford County, because you can not get the required number of people just by the 3 Western Maryland counties. You have to keep coming towards the east. In the same way, if you start from the very east, you have to keep coming towards the west to get the required number of people in a district. So the software will help you to figure this out. And once you've created a district, proposed district, it will tell you if you've created donut holes and you missed a census tract here or there. It will tell you that. So the concept of the public being able to submit maps to us, and the public being able to do this process, and then the commissioners able to do the same thing, and then to check what the public has done, is all based on this mapping software, which I will give, we will get further into it at a different meeting where we can show you what's going on. But you will be able to see that census information every step of the way. And then once you create that new map yourself, what you won't be able to do is you won't be able to use information about voter registrations and political parties, because by the executive order, you're not to use that information. And the residents or the official offices of potential candidates, you're not supposed to use that information. So we will supply information to you to populate the map, and you will be able to use that. I use the congressional example because it's easier to work with a large number and understand the problem of having had that many people. The legislative districts will be way smaller, and then you'll have to consider communities of interest. You'll consider those boundaries, consider municipal boundaries, and you'll consider all of those things. With Maptitude, you'll be able to make those choices and then pull all that into your mapping process. It's also going to allow you to filter and to sort plans, so that a public plan submitted, if one side of a map looks really interesting and positive to you, then that might be a map you want to save and consider. But Western Maryland was done well in this map, or this particular district around the national capital area was done well in this map. You'll be able to save those maps and see what's going on there. So there are lots of tutorials and lots of videos on the site for Maptitude. It's caliper.com, redistricting tutorials. You can find the tutorials, so you don't have to wait. You can start checking that out if you're interested in looking at what the software is capable of doing. So I would recommend that to you. And we will be setting up with the co-chairs a process for getting some additional training for how the software would be used. I think that you will find that the process, once we're using the same, there's the Maptitude website, and there's all kinds of the item at the far right that says learn. You can learn all about the software, and it has tutorials, training videos, webinars, technical tips, everything there at the Maptitude place. So I just want to tell you that's the software that the department has used for the last 2 redistricting cycles. We have people available who have used that software and seen the new iterations of the software. The web capability for the software was demonstrated through the Emergency Commission process. Emergency Commission received more than 36 maps submitted by the public, and then settled on a map that was as a base map that wasn't even submitted from someone who lived in the state, because it looked like it was headed in the same direction that the commission at the time was thinking. And then they made tweaks to that map. And every time you make a tweak to the map, you can display the variables on the side, the number of population, the race, the ethnicity of that population. You can see what's happening there every time you change a line. That's just an overview of what's going to be available to you. I didn't want to sit here and go through a technical demonstration of the software. I just want to give you some comfort that this process will give you a way to evaluate what's coming into you, and a way, if you're inclined, to try to tweak it around the edges, or to create a map of your own to solve a problem that you perceive in the map. But as a commission, we will be supporting you in that process. And that's the support comes through Maptitude.
Can I jump in and say that for those of you who want to go online to check this out, it's Caliper with a P. It's not natural to try to type caliber with a B, but it's Caliper with a P. So just remember that.
Yeah, my notes are kind of blocking out my transcript, so I can't see how that's being translated at this point.
Yeah, Walter, can you send that to us in a little note so we'll all have it?
Sure.
Yeah, we'll get that out to you.
And let me ask this question, Mr. Secretary. Is this the same software that was available back in 2010? And then the other question is, we know that the legislature will also be looking at this. Will they be using the same software, or will there be other type of software that citizens and others who are in this process be utilizing?
Let me take those questions, I think, in order. It is the same software that was used in 2010 in Maryland, and it is the same software that is being used by the Department of Legislative Services during this process also. So we are in sync. We may have philosophical differences or legal differences about what we would like to see, but the arguments from my position have always been they should be about our philosophical disputes and not data disputes. So we're on the same platform. So the answer to that is yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Secretary McCord, I have a question about the process. As these maps are submitted to us from the public, some ideas, do we have, or will we have a central repository where anyone can go in and see what the suggested maps are? How does the public know what has been submitted? Can they go in at any time? I guess that's. Yeah,
we will be creating an electronic file of the submissions, and we will have to categorize them so the file can be checked. So if someone submits something that's kind of incomplete, if we can't require someone to redistrict the entire state in order to submit a map for their suggestion for a particular district. We will try to categorize that to be able to find that. We will put some parameters on so that if, for instance, somebody wants to submit a congressional map that has 2 million people in the district, that will be a submission that goes into not to be considered because it violated the parameters. But we will categorize that, make it available to the commission, and it'll be available to the public also. So what everybody's submitting will be available, just like it was last time, if you can remember that for the people that were served last time. But yes.
Okay, so we'll give the public then the criteria so they won't submit things that won't be accepted. Could we do that? Like, you have to have 773,159 or.
Yes. And of course, the numbers I used tonight are, that's the apportionment number, which is the real number divided. But then the numbers for the estimates for the counties were just estimates. So, but you're right. We will we will make that available to the public.
Okay,
also.
very good. Thank
No
you.
problem. Thank you. Thank you.
Secretary McCord, Mary
Yes.
Clawson here.
Yes, Mary.
I know that you will be locating prisoners back to their home address. How are we going to make that adjusted data available so that public maybe is not going to use raw census data to try to accomplish the task?
That's a great question. And we have addressed that issue in any public forums I've been in to say that the Department of Planning will only post on its website the adjusted data, so that we would encourage everyone to use the adjusted data that's been published by the Department of Planning. And so the Department of Legislative Services, we have a memorandum of understanding to work together to confirm that those counts have been done correctly. Again, so that if we argue about philosophy, that's different than arguing about data. So we will only post the raw numbers could be used by anybody potentially, but we will only accept maps that were used constructed by adjusted data. So that's how we're going to handle it, right?
And if I could just clarify a little more, because I know many people ask this question. Once the data is available, people can use their own programs. They don't have to own a copy of Maptitude. They can own Dave's Redistricting, or there are several others that are either free or cheap. Members of the public don't have to buy Maptitude in order to submit maps that will be read in it, right?
That's correct. We're not requiring anybody to buy any particular software. Our requirement will be that you have to use the data that's been adjusted. The adjusted data will come in, and they may come in under someone else's format, but we have that.
And if I could just follow up on the requirement that formally submitted maps use that adjusted data, there isn't really any reason why people could not use the public comment process to submit like idea maps that had not yet been worked out with the final data, but which are like concept maps of, what if you put these two counties together? They wouldn't be processed in the way that that Maptitude could process them, but we could certainly discuss them as ideas in the meantime, right?
We could create a file for that if you'd like
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I suspect there'll be some public interest in getting those ideas afloat through maps even before the point at which we have the final data, is why I mentioned it.
Okay, we'll work on that for you, sir.
Okay.
All right, I think the next thing is the concept of redistricting consultants. And I can start addressing that. Of course, the executive order provides for consultants as necessary and feasible. The co-chair, Walter Olson and I have discussed this in the ability to have consultants to advise the commission on overview of the law and some practical ramifications that you should keep in mind as you begin to evaluate that feedback. So the consultants, there's lots of people out there that have been doing this for lots of time. So I've been supplying some information as I've received it, because we're one of the states that's receiving information, people that have done this before. I forward it to the commission. It will be you as a commission that will decide any consultants to be used in the process, either feedback that you've heard or review maps that have been submitted. More importantly, you would probably want to have a consultant to advise you concerning whatever you may be getting down to as finalist type maps, the maps that you'll be submitting as your final product. So the history of consultants doesn't generally involve a lot of consultants that kind of bill themselves as totally nonpartisan, because this is has always heretofore been a partisan process. So the independent commissions are having the same issue of trying to figure out who are the best people to use to make advice, that's meaningful advice to independent commissions. So you as a commission, again, are going to decide that. Whatever consultants will be most helpful for that process. No matter who's drawing the lines in a state, you have to strive to avoid those issues that are potential violations of the Constitution, other legal requirements, the Voting Rights Act, and any judicial rulings. So they can involve, two terms that you hear a lot, cracking and packing, which are Electoral strength is divided when districts are cracked, and packing is where electoral strength is concentrated in one particular district only. There are potential issues based on race and language. The consultant can advise on how to avoid or remedy a potential problem in a district before the commission makes a final plan. But again, we will defer to the commission on a choice of consultants. I know Walter Olson is someone who's known in the area and may have attracted some attention as far as potential consultants. I have received some inquiries, and everything gets passed on to the commission. So there's no decision made by the Department of Planning on a consultant. It will be the commission's decision on a consultant. And then there's a related question. The next item is a related issue with a commission advisor process. The commission also, under the executive order, can designate individuals with relevant experience to assist them. And so in able to call on people to assist in their work, the commission received interest from the Hispanic community regarding providing assistance. This segment of the Maryland population is a growing segment. It's a segment that's predicted by experts in 2010 to have be given consideration in 2021. So back in 2010, experts predicted that they might be an interest group that has to be considered for its voting block power. So there was a person who had devoted countless hours and endless energy to the census efforts. That was Miss Apportionment Blackwell. She was well known throughout the state for doing that. She was motivating the Hispanic community to respond to the census. She placed her resume for consideration, and she had been an advisor during the census process, and she's in the national capital area. And so that work with the Hispanic community and her work for the University of Maryland was made her qualified to provide assistance as advisor to the commission. So that's why her name was included in a resume for you guys last time. So again, it's a commission's prerogative. The commission can hire based on this to hire. So this is not a hire. This is an advisor. This is not a paid position.
Yeah, that's an important thing to keep in mind. The consultants unfortunately expect to get paid, and
of course,
that's very much part of the process of the very difficult process of figuring out what to do. Is that there is a budget constraint, and the more well-known they are, the famous law professors, the more they tend to charge for as consultants. The advisor position is very different. Of course, it is not voting and it is not compensated. It is simply advice, and we will probably, I guess, looking for an advisor who can bring insight into the Hispanic community, aside from its importance in itself, and it leads quickly to questions of the Voting Rights Act and its compliance. It leads to questions of whether there is a community of interest between different types of Hispanic communities from different original countries of interest. Many of the same issues come up with Asian Americans, and it is certainly possible that the commission may want to look at having an advisor for that sort of for that group of issues as well. Before I go on into that subject, I should pause in case there are more questions for the Secretary about the many things he's had to say. Any questions for him?
I do have a question, Secretary Mccord, about the consultant, because we want to make sure that we have an as nonpartisan a view as possible, but realizing consultants typically are leaning one direction or another. Have we in the past hired consultants perhaps from both of the major parties to have their point of view? So we kind of split the difference, or do you, in the past, has it just been one and that's the one we go with?
Let me say that I've been here only since this particular governor. So my access to the files indicates that the consultants were partisan. So,
okay.
And not bipartisan, so to speak. So, so my view for the commission is that you would do what you can to have kind of a bipartisan view of the world or nonpartisan view of the world if it's possible. But heretofore, all these elections have been partisan. All these processes have been partisan. So,
So that might be something we could consider, that we have two points of view, and then the members of the commission listen to both, and then we make the appropriate determination.
It's going to be one of the biggest and most important challenges as we go on through the spring, because making the wrong choice, we would regret it. We have to put nonpartisanship absolutely at the front of what we do. And
right.
That means sometimes asking tough questions or thinking of, unprecedented solutions. That we want ideas on, and other commissions around the country, as the secretary was saying, have been facing the same thing. I will say I've been trying to reach out and do some research, and I've spoken with people at the center of the work of the Arizona and California commissions, and they both confirmed the search for a truly nonpartisan consultant, which of course they, under their charters, as the pioneering two first citizens commissions, they were looking for nonpartisan advice, and they warned me right away this would be a frustrating search, and we should start thinking about it early.
And let me tell the other commissioners that when the three of us were appointed as chairs, we made it very clear that any consultants would have to be heavily vetted. And we want to make sure that no one who is brought in as a consultant will have any unfair political leanings. And we want as much information as possible. And to the extent that the other commissioners have suggestions, we would certainly welcome them. But we're going to take a hard look at all of the candidates before us, vet them properly, and make sure that they're either nonpartisan or certainly bipartisan.
I'd like to make a comment. I like the way the secretary said we're really doing it with the raw numbers. And if our what the number of people in the census block is the number of people. But I think once we start doing public hearings and showing the results of this, the first question in everybody's minds is, what's the political split? And I know that as a commission, I don't want to, that isn't why I joined to do this work. I don't think any of us did, but someone's going to have to be able to have those answers and look at it. I think one thing in the defense of this approach, nonpartisan approach, is the fact that so far, it doesn't seem to be guided by the very vague term communities of interest. It seems to be more guided by the pure one person, one vote, number of people in districts and, electing officials. So I think there's some fundamentals we need to do to kind of put the list together of what are those guidelines that are going to drive us, and then we'll have to work from there.
And the governor's executive order does have some detail. I think there's going to be a strong emphasis on compactness and on congruity with county and municipal boundaries, more so than many other states. And it's clear when you speak to people who have run independent commissions in some of these other states that they often have different criteria than the ones that are in the governor's executive order, and perhaps don't put as much emphasis on things like compactness. So we have some of that, but there is more that we will be having a lot of discussions and meetings about exactly what Mary brings up.
If I may, Commissioner Clawson, the executive order is clear that it shall not account for how individuals are registered to vote, how individuals voted in the past, the political party to which individuals belong, or the domicile or residence of any individual, including.
We cannot consider that, and I'll use my the line I may have used before, which is at our public hearings, someone will get up and begin talking about Republican or Democrat, this or that. My town is Democratic, or, don't let the Republicans do this. And I just tell them, we all brought cotton to put in our ears. You're wasting your 3-minute presentation. If you introduce these partisan things, tell us when you're ready to stop talking politics, and we'll take the cotton out of our ears, because we cannot consider that. And generally the public, because this happened on the Emergency 6 District Commission, where we were under the same constraint. And I have to say that the public understood, because they want the use of their full 3 minutes. So we didn't have many people straying after one warning. More questions for the commissioner, or otherwise, thank you for this introduction. We will be hearing more about all of this.
Thank you very much for having the time.
He introduced a topic that we now should spend some attention on. You have all had a chance to get the resume of Gloria Aparicio Blackwell. Wondered if there were any reactions immediately before we decide what to do next. Any plus or minus from any commissioners? As Bob said, her name came forward because of her work with the census with the planning department. And the census, of course, was a project of great nonpartisan interest in which Maryland benefited by getting strong participation from all communities. And I think was very successful in doing so. We could do one of two things. We could either, if people are comfortable offering her that position as unpaid Hispanic advisor, we can proceed to have a motion to do that. If there are reservations or concerns, we could wait a week, or perhaps commissioners could be invited to bring in alternative candidates if anyone is inclined that way. Is there a sense of how people feel on this? Are we okay with
Walter, I think we've had an opportunity to thoroughly review her resume, which is impressive. It's an unpaid position. She would serve as a resource for the commission. So I feel very comfortable if we want to put forth a motion to approve her as an advisor.
Kim, by the way, before I take a second, Kim, are you comfortable with that, or do you have any particular comments? Because I know you had a question last week.
Well, I agree. I did have a time to review, and I agree that the resume was very impressive, and I'm comfortable moving forward with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a second to Dr. Hetherington's motion?
I second the motion.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So we have approved offering Gloria Aparicio Blackwell that advisory opportunity. We've got a few more. Because it's 10 minutes to 8, I'm going to breeze very quickly by the next. There's an item for working groups and subcommittees, and I just want to put out one idea here. We will probably find it useful to form groups of less than 9 people to tackle things that some of us are interested in doing volunteer help on, for example, or some of us have expertise in things that the commission is going to tackle. I just want to throw out the idea that any of you who have website experience designing websites, making them more usable, do consider jumping in and maybe forming a 3-person working group on improving the website, because it's one of the things that different talents will make the website better. So it doesn't have to be now, but just email me if any of you want to volunteer on that. With that, let's move on to the next large thing, scheduling and meeting planning. And with the consent of the body, I'm going to shift the order of the points, because there's something we absolutely do need to address as soon as possible before we get to the structure for meetings, which is scheduling meetings. Next Wednesday, of course, we will be meeting and Dr. Hetherington will be chairing. The Wednesday after that is May 26th. And unfortunately, that one just won't work. So I'm hoping that people can tell us whether there is another day, perhaps the Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday of that week that well, we can get ideally all of us or you know, as many of us as possible. Have people got their calendars to look at? Should we go one by one? I think that the judge and Dr. Hetherington and I have already looked at our calendars, and those other days are okay with all three of us, right?
That's correct, Walter.
I'm
What
sorry.
day was that?
It's the other dates are the 24th, the 25th, and the 27th, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday.
If it's at the same time, those all work for me.
Those.
Me as well.
If it's at 7
Those times would work for me as well.
I'm sorry. I'm
William,
William Tipper Thomas. It was okay for you two then, or?
it's okay for me if it's at the same time on Monday and Tuesday.
Okay, Monday and Tuesday. And how about Cheryl?
All days work for me as well.
Okay.
At 7, yeah.
Kim?
Monday does not work for me.
Okay, we're down to Tuesday. Jonathan, does Tuesday work for you?
Tuesday would work for me.
Yeah, I think we've got everyone available for Tuesday. So absent objection, we will go ahead and put in Tuesday, May 25th as our meeting for that week. And we should be able to get all of us there. Good. That makes me very happy. So let me back up one point in the agenda and just say a little bit, because we are running out of time, on the structure for meetings. I mentioned before that there were two basic kinds of meetings. Most meetings would be either one or the other. Meetings for us to do business, and the public can observe, but is mostly not participating, and then public hearings. And as far as structure goes, tonight's structure is basically the structure that we'll see for the planning meetings or the meetings where we do business. Public meetings are going to use some different features of Zoom, and I just want to spend a minute or two previewing those, in part for members of the public who may have tuned in and be interested once the public hearing process starts in how it's going to go. In the traditional in-person public hearing, there is a sign-up sheet. Everyone interested in giving testimony, which was traditionally 3 minutes, although that can change if the room is absolutely full. You might move down to 2 or whatever, but people sign in the sign-up sheet if they want to talk. That then makes it easy to call on people in the order in which they signed up. Zoom allows a parallel process through the chat function, which we should be able to make functional, but Kristen tells me that it will probably still differ in a couple of ways. For example, we will probably want to invite people, and we did not tend to do this at the in-person hearings, invite people to submit written questions ahead of time. This could be useful in getting some of the most frequently asked questions out of the way. For example, one feature of public hearings is that 4 people will all want to ask the same question, and it's too embarrassing to get out of line. So you get asked that same different versions of the same question. It could make the thing more content rich to get some good advanced questions from the public. And then again, in in-person hearings, typically there would be a wrap up at the end saying, is there anyone who wants to step forward who did not go on the sign up sheet? I assume that Zoom will probably work the same way. But again, there will be some differences here. Zoom allows for that sign up sheet to be turned into a sequence of permissions to show up as a panelist and then be rotated off, and the next panel or the next public member comes on. So this may be old hat to people who've done a lot of public hearings on Zoom, but I'm not one who has done a lot of public hearings on Zoom. So that's just a preview of those public meetings, and we will be working on trying to get dates and regional identities for those hearings in coming weeks. Now, the last general area is commission questions and discussions. We have 3 minutes left, and of course we can move, we can go over time. What are some questions that we haven't addressed, or questions raised by things we said? Any of the commissioners?
Walter, I know you went over the public meetings and the structure. And the only thing that I would say is that we should begin to at least explore the possibility of face-to-face personal hearings. Things seem to be opening up a little bit. I noticed in Baltimore Sun today that the restaurants by the mayor are now opening up. So I don't know whether that's something we should think about or explore, but we don't know what's going to happen in the fall. So we certainly should be mindful of that.
This is exactly true. The situation has been changing so fast, and Governor Hogan had an announcement reopening practically everything with masks, and then even the masks are not going to be required after a little bit longer. I was somewhat shocked. I try to follow what the other citizens redistricting commissions are doing on the web, and people send me articles. And the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, created by Voter Initiative recently, is doing a frenetic pace of 2 public hearings a week. And they are in person. And of course, Michigan is a huge state. So they're going up to the Upper Peninsula and so forth. Fortunately, Maryland is smaller, which means not only would we not have to drive as far, but also we wouldn't have to really have as many hearings in order for them to be convenient for many different parts of the state. But you know, we don't have to make any decisions tonight, but please think about these things. Be in touch with us if there are particular reasons why you feel strongly one way or the other, because we want to get that conversation going. There's a lot of, the public places a lot of value on in-person meetings, even though I know we also want to do some online ones, which are also valued by many members of the public. So.
Walter, I'd just like to add, because you know, the situation is changing all the time, that you're right, and we should think about that going forward. The other positive thing about doing it through Zoom is that not everybody is comfortable in being in public places. And if they do, we do have these public hearings, there will be people who will say, I'll do the public, but there's no way I'm coming in person. It's too early. So I think that might be a little bit farther out until things get better. I mean, things are doing well. I'm surprised about Michigan because I thought they had a high positivity rate. So I'm kind of shocked to hear that they're doing in person. But anyway, all that to say, I think that's in the distance, but not in the immediate future. I think we want to make sure that safety and security, not only for the commissioners, but the public, is primary.
Yeah. And again, I bring it up because the public likes having a lot of different options. It likes
exactly.
And we found the same thing. There were, it was really valued by the public that we had some afternoon options rather than all evening, for example, even though most people tended to prefer evening. There were some people whose jobs just never let them tune in for an evening one. So throwing in a couple of ones earlier during the business day got us appreciation from those people with job conflicts. So just things to think about, nothing to decide tonight.
Right. And Walter, one other point, these meetings are recorded. So if somebody couldn't view it at the time, they can always go in the following day and take a look at it. And then of course they can always send us information via email or any questions. So there's so many ways that the public can have their voices heard. So I think we just have to keep emphasizing that.
Even in 2019, before this became so familiar, we were finding that significant numbers of people were viewing the videos of our hearings after we held them, and the interest would go on for weeks. People who simply couldn't make it, or people who'd heard from some friend that there had been a hearing. So this is going to be, I hope, a big resource. Okay.
Can I also add, just during the transition of in-person meetings, can we also explore the option of hybrid if we have the ability to have laptops and televisions
Absolutely.
there?
Absolutely, yeah. I think, in fact, that I would guess that we're going to wind up with that as a middle ground for that works well for some of these questions. Any other questions, or should I move to adjournment? Okay, we have more or less kept to our hour, 8:02. So thank you all. We will be meeting next Wednesday with Dr. Hetherington chairing. I guess I should entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, second, anyone?
All right.
Okay, all in favor of adjourning, say aye or bye.
Aye.
Thank you all so much. See you next week.
All
Thank
right,
you.
bye, everybody. Thank
Bye.
Thank you
you.
much. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.